Hello, everyone. And yeah, hello, Bristol. It's fantastic to be back here again. We absolutely love IHR. And thank you, my good friend, for being there the whole time. It was last year. We had, 5 minutes warning and we were up on the stage. Fantastic when you've had no time to prepare. And the year before that, someone from the audience ran up onto the stage and gave me a 4-minute hug. I felt like David Bowie.
And I was standing here and I felt like a spare part, I can tell you.
Okay, brilliant. So look, I want you to get involved in this. So before we start, we want to ask you two really important questions. One, whose organization here is struggling to find good, diverse talent? Please raise your hand. In fact, we have another question. Keep your hands up if that's all right, so we know who's who.
Okay, great. So I have a question for you. Which of your organizations are struggling to drive social value? That is the S of ESG. Which of your organizations is struggling to find S of the social value of ESG? Please stand up if that is the case.
Yes, indeed.
All right. And if any of you are struggling on both, feel free to vent. You can shout, you can scream, you can say how awful it is, but we want to hear you.
Yeah.
Any venting?
We asked them to throw chairs last time and someone threw a couple, so we won't do that this time. Brilliant. So, let's
kick on.
Off.
Right. I'm going to kick off. My name is James. I'm the founder of Bridge of Hope, and I was born white, male, and very privileged.
And I'm Chance Blue Montgomery. I'm the partner support manager for Bridge of Hope Careers, and unlike James, I was born extremely unlucky.
And we work for a social enterprise called Bridge of Hope, and we have a fairly unique claim to fame that all of us have been locked up. Yep, you weren't probably expecting that. In my case, a psychiatric ward just outside New York.
And in my case, a prison in Brixton and a mental hospital in Hackney.
So what we're going to do is tell you about our own very different journeys to how it came together to the Bridge of Hope. We're going to explain a little bit about Bridge of Hope and what it does. And then critically, we're going to talk about inclusive hiring and how that can turbocharge your social value. So I'm going to kick off. As I said, I was born white, male, and very privileged. That was the understatement of the century. I was born in Newmarket, near Cambridge, happy, idyllic childhood. Age 13, I was sent away to the world's most famous boarding school. That one. I was in the same class as a boy called Cameron. That one. He went on to run the country. And I was 2 years below a buffoon called Boris, who went on to run the country into the ground. But please don't judge me. So from there, I went into Edinburgh University, and then I went into the drinks world. So I spent 2.5 decades happily working in the drinks industry, running pubs, and then I worked for Guinness and Diageo. I loved every minute of it. In 2002, got posted off to America. And by 2008, I was running most of the biggest customers for Diageo in North America. I think Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, all of that kind of good stuff. I was happily married, had 3 kids, big swimming pool, large house. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you're probably judging by the fact that I set up a social enterprise, maybe quite a lot, and that would be the understatement of the century. I probably was the luckiest person on the planet for 40 odd years, but that deserted me spectacularly in 2007. You remember the big financial crash and all that fun and games? That was the starting gun, as it were, for everything unraveling for me. I then got made redundant 5 times in 6 years. I got swindled twice, all my money taken away. I got sued, my business taken away. And I just kept on getting beaten up all the way, every which way to Tuesday. And then there was a fateful day where literally all my money had been taken away from me by not very friendly people. And I had to try and feed my family. And so I went to Walmart just outside New York. You probably know Asda over here. And all the money I could cobble together was $5.41. Everything else had gone. And so I had to make a decision. I was getting the shopping for a week for a family, 3 hungry teenagers, and I had $5.41. So my challenge was, do I buy a loaf of bread and some Nutella, or do I buy a box of cereal and some milk? And we're all put on this planet basically to do a couple of things. Ideally, if possible, to procreate, and then ideally to feed those children. I was quite good at the former, and there I was, patently unable to do the latter. And that's when my wiring came undone. And then for the next few weeks, I was unable to operate. I used to go into my office, I used to shut the door. I didn't manage to turn the computer on in 3 weeks because that was beyond me. So not surprisingly, I was sent to go and see a doctor. I went to see a doctor, talked about what was happening, and they said, right, here's 2 pieces of paper, one of which is a bunch of drugs that I needed to get in the local pharmacy, and the other was a strict instruction. And it said, you need to go to the emergency ward in Norwalk Hospital immediately. There's a team of 4 people waiting for you. Do nothing else under any circumstances. So I did the obvious thing. I tore both pieces of paper up. I threw them in the waste paper bin, or trash as they called it over there. And I went home and I said, guess what? There's nothing wrong with me. Denial was complete. But you probably imagine that denial's not that great a strategy for life. And I found out fairly quickly. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in front of another psychiatrist who turns around and said the most terrifying sentence I'd ever heard in my life, which is, you are sectioned for the foreseeable future. And I'm like, holy shit, excuse my French. I didn't know which was worse, you are sectioned or the foreseeable future. I kind of thought foreseeable future actually meant for life. So I spent two and a half interesting weeks in a psychiatric ward, not massively dissimilar to a typical hospital ward. 3 things I suppose would be rather different, one of which is the door. The door is quite thick. I mean, you could throw a couple of grenades at that door, you ain't getting out, I can assure you there. The windows, they were equally thick. How do I know that? Well, we were on the 8th floor, and one of my fellow inmates decided to hurl themselves out of the window right in front of me, and fortunately came bouncing back. Final thing is, they didn't have any curtains or shower curtains. And I kept on thinking it was a little strange, and maybe that was cost savings or whatever, until the penny dropped. Fortunately, my brother and uncle came out, and they said, look, I tell you what, we're going to take him off your hands, and we're going to bring him back to the UK to recover. Everybody thought that was a great idea. I didn't get a vote. However, if I'd had a vote, I would have thought it was a great idea. So I came back here, having been 15 years in America, talked to 2 doctors, and both said, yeah, unquestionably, you have bipolar disorder. I'm like, well, what the hell is that, first of all? And they're like, it used to be called manic depression. I'm like, oh, that sounds a bit familiar. And of course, I automatically denied it. And then slowly I accepted it, and now 6 years on, it's my superpower. I wouldn't give it back for love or money. But then over the next few weeks, my Maslow's pyramid, if you could call it that, then decided to crumble into 1,000,000 pieces. My marriage went, boomf. All 3 kids went, still gone. My corporate career went, and everything I owned on the planet, apart from a suitcase, went in 3.5 weeks. So I had to keep going. I had to do what I'd failed to do before, was I had to feed my children. So I thought I wasn't allowed to do anything involving using my brain, because I'd already fried that. So I thought, I'll go and get a job in a pub. Nobody would give me a job. Well, I'll try a coffee shop. Nobody would give me a job. In fact, nobody would touch me with a 12-foot barge pole. And having been white, male, and exceptionally privileged, I didn't know there were barriers to employment, because they happened to other people. But there they were, staring me in the face. Luckily, there was a frozen meat factory down the road. They just said, look, I tell you what, are you prepared to get up at 3 in the morning, work 18-hour days on minimum wage at minus 55 degrees? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. They're like, you've got the job. So I was a janitor for 1.5 years, well, nearly a year, while my classmate was prime minister. The irony wasn't lost on me as I hacked ice off the roof. Clawed my way back from there, got back into the drinks industry, started to rebuild my life. 2018, I got laid off one more time. I just doubled my targets 2 years in a row. They thought they could get a couple of 20-year-olds to do the job and save some money. And that was a big moment in my life. It was in North London. I remember walking to a churchyard. I sat on a wall, and I'm like, God, you're going to have to give me some help here because I have no idea what's going on in my life. And I did. I got a good old talking to. And I could point you to the spot, but basically he said, mate, I didn't put you here to get people drunk, and I was good at that. I put you here to help people, do something meaningful with your life. And then he naffed off. But I decided I'd do something meaningful. And I didn't know what, but I knew the kind of North Star for my life was around the power of a job. I'd had 25 years in employment. Life was bloody amazing. Then I'd had 7 years of large unemployment, and it was utterly shit. Excuse the French. There wasn't another word for it. And I knew it wasn't just me. And I knew there were thousands and thousands of people out there, way less fortunate than myself, that just needed help. So I thought, okay, I'm rather naive about this. I was a beer salesman. I'm like, how the hell do I do this? So I thought, I'm going to ring up a bunch of charities. They look after people who need help, last time I checked. And I rang up 42 charities. And they all looked after people ultimately who needed help. They could be neurodiverse, they could be veterans, they could be ex-offenders, refugees. And I asked the CEOs 2 questions. I said, number 1, what do you do to get your clients back on their feet? Number 2, what do you do to get your clients back into work? Now, all 42 had an incredible program to get them back on their feet. And all 42 did sweet FA to get them into work. And I'm like, this is kind of bonkers. Surely, isn't that the most important part of the equation? I know I'm a beer salesman, but surely they're missing a point there. But also, I'm bipolar, so I see opportunity, and I'm like, wow, what a talent pool. These people, incredible people supported by amazing charities, they just need access. And 6 years ago, there were all this skills shortage and all these companies like yours whining, saying, we can't find people. We want to be more diverse, but didn't know where to do it. So that was the aha moment. Why don't we connect the dots? Hence the Bridge of Hope. So that was 2018. We started a tiny little charity connecting untapped talent to inclusive employers. We worked with lots of care leavers, people coming out of prison, and it worked pretty well as a charity. We put lots of people into work. It wasn't terribly scalable, is the honest answer. It was very analog. And then there was a thing called a pandemic. I'm pretty sure it came to Bristol, but it was quite bad where we were anyway. And that was a big spanner in the works, but proved to be a blessing in disguise. Because we said, okay, we have to go digital whether we like it or not. We flipped from a charity to a social enterprise. We said, let's try and do this at scale. And why limit it just to people coming out of charities? What about boot camps? What about social enterprises? What about non-Russell unis and all these organizations that got great people that just need access? And also people who self-refer. We're like, come on in, you are welcome. If you're a mum returner, you're neurodiverse, you're autistic, fantastic. And by the way, all of the things crap out there is great in here. We get rid of the barriers. We have employers looking for autistic people. We have even more looking for ex-offenders. So that was the logic. We're now 3 years in, and we were hoping we'd have 1,500 candidates. Right now we have 77,855, and they come from about 100 charities, boot camps, social enterprises. And we work with about 65 multinational blue chips to put them in great jobs with wonderful companies. Now, before we tell you how that works, and then also so what for social value, which I know a lot of you are here to answer, I'm going to ask Chance to tell you his story. So I'm kind of like the warm-up act. So before you hear this, I would suggest you gird your loins, grab some Kleenex, because it's one hell of a journey. And I'll come back and talk to you in a moment, but thank you very much.
Nice one, James. Whew. Hi, everyone. I don't know why, but I feel a little bit nervous. But let me start. There's a huge amount of passion that drives Bridge of Hope careers. It comes from these real lived experiences. So let me just take a moment to tell you mine. I'll try and keep it as short as I can. Unlike James, I didn't have a Cameron or a Boris in my class. I had a nuisance of a guy called Spider, and that was about it for me. So it was even worse than that. I was unfortunately born into a family where my dad didn't think I was his. And so I experienced a lot of physical abuse, first being before I was 1 year old. And that left me with what I thought were birthmarks until I was 21. Mum told me what really happened, my 21st birthday. So I didn't feel significant. I ran away. I ran away a lot. And I met some friends, and they made me feel good. They made me feel significant and loved at times. But the byproduct of that was they were from the antisocial membership, and it was only going to be a matter of time before I got into trouble. And I did. So by the time I was 16 years old, I ended up in prison. By the time I was 18, my sister took me to a mental hospital because the childhood depression and trauma had seriously taken its toll. And I was really struggling. I tried to make changes, not to much success. And then my sister, who was my absolute rock, my only rock at times, she died young of cancer right there in front of me. And I didn't want to talk about it because then that would make it real, which is the worst thing you could do, because within a year, my life completely fell apart, completely unraveled. And I ended up back inside one last time. But this time I asked myself this question. I said, do you like who you are? And the answer was a solid no. In fact, I thought if this was going to be my existence for my future, I didn't see the point in having a life. I really didn't. And I'll never forget the day. I just wanted it all to end. And so I was left with these choices to literally either jump off a cliff or change. And so I threw everything in the kitchen sink and the neighbor's kitchen sink at change, and spent 3 years and 10 months in therapy almost every day to unlock some pain. And spent 5 years studying with the Open University to give myself an education my childhood did not afford unto me, and done swathes of personal development programs. And then this incredible day came upon me where I was just warm and filled with ebullience, and the warm, warm tears of joy came flooding uncontrollably down my face. And it was because for the first time in my entire life, I felt freedom. No more emotional discombobulation, no more anger. I was filled with forgiveness and topped to the brim with self-respect. And I realized two things had happened to me on that day. One, my childhood experiences were no longer going to define my future, and that I'd finally become the person I was always meant to be. And that was the day I decided whatever work I'm doing, it must be about changing lives, nourishing communities, and making a real difference. Yes, thanks.
Right, now we're going to tell you a little bit about what we do very quickly, and then we're going to talk about social value, which is, I know, what you're here to do. So, very quickly, we have two core products. I'll keep it super simple. One is called Inclusive Hiring Unlimited. Basically, you can put all your jobs up on our site. You can use our candidate database and hire as many people as you like. It is unlimited. Help yourself, all for the price of a couple of hires. That's the core. We then have a product of you saying, okay, we want to lean into a particular talent pool. It might be a passive group, might be more disability people from disabled people. It might be neurodiverse. Call it what you like. But finding this passive talent is key. And we have a product called Social Boost. Do you want to explain how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where real innovative thinking comes into play with this. You know, so the Social Boost to find people. My partner's autistic and has ADHD. Yet she's never got a job through those traditional pathways, always struggles with the situational judgment tests, etc. Yet she's a lecturer at Greenwich University. Her work on speech and language is taught around the world, an expert in intersectionality. How do people like this struggle to get through these pathways? And so we need to find out where they went, because we know they've given up on LinkedIn, Read, Monster, all these places. They've just given up. And so we decided to do a bit of research and find out where they went, and we found them. We found them in chat rooms. We found them on forums. We found them on Spotify listening to podcasts about how crap it is trying to get a job with autism. Then we're able to use this programmatic media and put the adverts right in front of their faces on their socials where they haven't left, saying something to the tune of, we know you've given up, but for once your neurodivergence will go in your favor. Here's an employer looking for you. We trialed it out. When we first got started with the Royal Mail, they wanted 200 women returners. They got that in abundance. But it was one that really tested the mettle. And I thought it was actually a prank. And this was when one of our clients, BA Systems, said, could you use this technology to find them diverse engineers in Barrow-in-Furness? Yeah, you heard that right. Ooh. So we were like, okay, look, if we get them 5 candidates, at least they'll meet their ROI, it'll be fine. But we do understand the data points connected to system-impacted people. And we got creative and included candidates that lived on the outskirts who were diverse and engineers willing to work and live in the area. And they got back 536 applications, and it absolutely blew our minds. But it also crystallized our initial thoughts that system impacted candidates are nowhere to be seen on these traditional places and spaces. We now know how to go out and find them and bring them back into to the table. So it's all about thinking differently in this space.
So you're going, okay, well, how does social value fit in? So that would be us about a year ago. We were fast-growing, small social enterprise, all looked wonderful. The reality is we had no money. It was scary as hell. Fortunately, we have got a capital injection since then. And when we were going through that program, the CEO said to us, what exactly are you? And now he's a South London geezer, who's like Ray Winston's brother.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we're an inclusive talent portal. And he goes,
Nah, you're not. You're more like social value on steroids, aren't you?
so we're like, where are you going with this? And he said, well, how much social value is one of your candidates worth? We're like, £20,000 typically. If they've been in prison, £60,000. That's value to society, taking them off the dole into paid work and paying tax. And he goes, £20,000. Okay, he said, because I'm getting nothing but grief from our pension company. They're getting grief about this. That's a lot. How does that compare if we did some volunteering? I said, it doesn't. That's less than £1,000. It makes you feel good. We went through a whole bunch of other levers to try and push social value. None got close to inclusive hiring. So his point is, well, why the hell are you not telling people about this? So we've come up with what we call a framework, which we call the Social Value Accelerator. And this is just some initial thoughts around social value. But we'd love to just share it with you. If we can help in any way, we think it's great. So number one of the Social Value Accelerator is advisory. So we help you win bids. So this is an open invitation to all of you.
Yep.
We can help you. We're happy to do this. We don't charge any money. We help you win bids. And if you're going to bids with local government, various other things, 10 to 30% can be on social value. So how does this work? Well, for example, one of our agencies we work with said, well, can we take you up? We said, yes. It was a council, Dudley Council. They wrote down, question was, what about diversity in Dudley? They had the normal, well, we have 2 brown women and a disabled person on the board. Aren't we great? We took that off and we said, okay, and rewrote it. We work with Bridge of Hope. They have 3,500 disadvantaged candidates within 3 miles of Dudley. They've got 10,000 within 20 miles, and we could do a social boost to go and find more. So it becomes an activation opportunity. So that advisory is the first bit. Second bit is immersion. So we really bring it to life. And luckily, we got a silver bullet, an expert, an evangelist for that. Do you want to explain how that works?
The
Immersive masterclass.
Oh my gosh, yes. So the masterclass, I've been to masterclass up and down the country, and there was one thing missing from that was empathy. So we created a learn with empathy model. And this is something we want you to really embed in most of the things you do. So it includes all the wonderful stuff you'd expect, like understanding intersectionalities, unconscious biases, etc. But it's dappled with those real lived experience stories. And in the neurodiversity part of the series, we play games, and the games are designed to make you feel like what it might be like to have cognitive overload from ADHD, or feel like what it might be like to be dyslexic, and really building in high levels of empathy there. And that creates the equilibrium of thought on social mobility. So yes, it's right to meet those targets, but yes, it's right to do it for the right reason. And you get that balanced mindset within your teams.
Brilliant. And final thing is there's actually stuff that can be done. We do a lot of programs around social value in a geography, really deep for that particular area, or maybe helping your supply chain. You want to try and make your supply chain more diverse. We'd love to talk to you about how we might be able to help there. So the whole raft of different things that we can do. This is very uncharted territory, but just remember the one thing. If you want to spike your social value, inclusive hiring is the way to do it. If you want to make your CEO really happy, show them you're driving a ton of social value because that's going to help them make their investors and pension companies happy. We're conscious of time, so I'm going to ask Chance to leave you with one final thought about your son. Before we have any questions.
Absolutely. And before I do that, I'd love you guys to connect with us on LinkedIn. We're happy to do a free talk to you and your team. We just want to change hearts and minds in this country on this subject. But let me leave you with one thing, because this is how deep social mobility is for us. And it's something that comes from my son. Now, my son, whether I was good or bad throughout my life, he always said, Dad, I love you. And it's beautiful to hear that. But one day, with all the changes that I made to my life and personal development, he came up to me and he said, Dad, I love who you are. And that moved me. That moved me to tears, in fact. And I started to think about all the other families and children from disadvantaged backgrounds. I thought, of course, the children love them, but do they love who they are? Because it's when they love who they are, that's when inspiration strikes in the household and ricochets out as a positive light in our communities. My son now said, I want to do what you did. I want to help people. And he's landed himself a job as a teacher's assistant. I'm so proud. So this is very real. So don't think about getting bums on seats and let's get these candidates in. Just think about the inspiration that will take hold within those households, within those communities. Please come and meet me, talk to us. Apparently I smell nice as well, someone said earlier.
And we welcome any questions, but thank you very, very much.